DB Sweeney on the Fish Bowl. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me. I first just wanted to say that I'm a huge fan of your work, and I've been following your career for a long time. The first question I wanted to ask you is what got you interested in film?
Well, I started out in theater, and I really love doing plays. I didn't have any background in it when I was in, I did one play when I was in high school, but everything was about sports for me. And then got to college, and a bunch of us who said we were acting students couldn't get parts in the plays at New York University, so we decided we'll just do our own little thing here in this abandoned space, 725 Broadway, which is where it's now an incredible, beautiful building there. They've raised a lot of money and they raised the tuition, but when we were there, it was kind of dingy and run down, and we took over this little building and made a theater, and we learned how to do the lights and do the sound, and somebody would direct, somebody would act, and we'd just put on a play, and we'd set up 60 seats, and sometimes there'd be 3 of them filled, and sometimes there'd be 11, but the show was about learning and trying to figure out what we were doing. And so I was having a great time doing that. And then one night an agent came and sat in one of those 3 seats that were filled, and I was off and running. So, led to TV and movies and TV commercials and other things. But I had no idea that was going to happen.
Awesome. Very cool. I actually went to school here I'm located in Pittsburgh, and I actually went to school for screenwriting at Point Park University, and I've won a few film festivals and have a few things published on Amazon, but we're here to talk about you. Now, there's no way I'll be able to get to everything on the list that I have to talk to you about. So I kind of picked and choose which films that I thought that I really like you in the most, and I figured we could save the rest for I could probably do two more hour-long interviews talking with you about your work. But the first movie that I wanted to talk to you about is one of my favorites, and it's a little bit more towards the beginning of your career, and that's No Man's Land.
Yes, No Man's Land. That was a great experience. Charlie Sheen had just gotten Platoon hadn't even come out yet, but everybody in Hollywood was like, this thing's going to be a big deal, and this kid's going to be a big star, and they were right. And so I got to spend time with him right as he was becoming, a very famous person. He went from being somebody's kid in Malibu to on the cover of Time magazine in the space of about 6 months, and I was right there along for the ride. So I have some great memories from that time.
Awesome. What was it like working with the rest of the cast? Randy Quaid, Bill Duke.
Yeah, Bill Duke was great. I mean, I really enjoyed being around him. He's such a pro. And he wasn't directing yet, I don't think, but you could tell that he was a guy who was going to be a great director. And Emmett Walsh was another one of my heroes that I got to be in scenes with. And Randy Quaid was great. I know he's kind of had some issues lately, but he's a tremendous actor, and he was a great guy to be around. I learned a lot.
Awesome. I really like the gritty type movies, and you've done a lot of those that I'm a big fan of. Another one that I wanted to talk about was Memphis Belle.
Yeah, Memphis Belle was a great story, and a great, that's a part of our World War II history that I think a lot of people at that time, and probably, we could use the Memphis Belle now. We just had Midway, which I think was great for a lot of young people to learn a little bit more about World War II through entertainment. And Memphis Belle had that same function back in 1990. The 8th Air Force and the daylight bombing campaign that the Allies waged against the Germans was the most dangerous job you could have as an American, and pretty much for the British side as well. The planes were completely vulnerable, and the Allied High Command had decided that the only way that we were going to end the war quickly would be to destroy Germany's ability to rebuild and re-equip. So they sent these planes, which were very slow, lumbering planes, but they could bomb very accurately once they got to the target, thanks to the Norden bomb site. And but they were incredibly vulnerable on the way in and on the way out. So the commanders knew there were going to be great losses to doing that, but they decided that it was, an acceptable losses to achieve the objective. So it's a great story. I mean, I think 10% of the American casualties in World War II were bomber crews, and most people don't know that. So it's just, D-Day, the story's been told, and it should be told, and a lot of other stories have been told. So I thought it was great that we were telling that story, because my uncle had been a navigator on a B-17, so I knew the history growing up, and I just thought it was great. It's great to be part of a movie where you feel like you can tell people something that might not have known about.
Absolutely. My dad is really the one that he got me pretty much into like everything that I'm into. The reason I have such like a strong love for war movies and westerns is definitely because of him. And there's so many great stories and battles to choose from World War II that make great for storytelling and reinterpretation over the years. And with everything that's going on in the country right now, and besides this whole pandemic thing, I think World War II history is definitely very, very prominent now.
Yeah, I think that we got to do a better job of teaching American history. American history is not just about slavery and the Civil War and the various other things that are very popular to teach. I mean, the Civil War will never get old. I mean, that's one of the great subjects also. But there's a version of America that's taught in schools now, which is that America is not a force for good in the world, which is a travesty.
Right, right. I did want to talk about some of your other work. Another film that I'm a big, big fan of is Blue Desert.
Oh, wow, you're really going back in the archive.
Yeah, actually, most of my list is more of your early work. I figured, we could save like another interview for some other stuff. Like I said, I'm a big fan of like the gritty stuff. That's like a lot of the inspiration for like my own style of like screenwriting. To talk to you about some of those types of films is, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, Blue Desert was interesting. I was in a period right there where I done big movies like Memphis Belle, and I think I did Cutting Edge the year after Blue Desert. But I was interested in these smaller movies because I felt like you could take more chances. You could do stories that are not really maybe for a broad audience. And so I was learning about how to make movies on a smaller budget. And I was just hired as an actor. I wasn't a producer or a writer or anything on that movie, but I thought it was interesting the way the movie was constructed. It took advantage of the setting in order to be able to make the movie at that price. And I think a lot of independent movies make the mistake of trying to be bigger than they are. And that movie it just works because Courtney Cox is terrific in that part, and that was sort of one of the last things she did before she went on Friends. So it was kind of fun to watch her. The same as I'd watched Charlie go from being just another guy, and Courtney from being just another girl in Hollywood to being one of the friends. So that's always fun when you get to see somebody go through that experience.
Absolutely. And you've actually worked with Craig Sheffer quite a bit, and I'm interested. Are you guys like friends offset because you've done like quite a few movies together, and I'm like a big big fan of his as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his too. I haven't seen him in many many years, but yeah, we did 3 movies together. I thought he was great in Fire in the Sky, and we did this one, and then my very first movie. Well, I had one line in the movie. I don't call that my first movie called Power, but my first movie where I really had a part was Fire with Fire, which while we were making it was called Captive Hearts, and that was Virginia Madsen and John Polito and some terrific people in that movie as well. Gene Smart, and I got to be very good friends with Chef, and the director of the movie, Duncan Gibbons, was a great guy. He and I became friends. He was killed in the Malibu fires back in the 90s. Which is weird. Only 3 people died, and he was one of them. So that was a great tragedy. But I learned so much on that movie. I was very green. We were up in Vancouver, and I became friends with Virginia, and we're friends to this day. And just so many things every day was a learning experience for me. So it's a very fond memory.
Very cool, very cool. I think it's like a perfect segue because there's 2 movies on the list I have that I wanted to talk about specifically because to me they're probably like my 2 top favorites with you in it, and that was Fire in the Sky and Spawn. But I want to talk about Fire in the Sky first because my dad again got me into everything that I'm into, and that was one of the movies that he actually rented for me from Blockbuster when I was little and showed it to me, and then of course it got played on the movie channels and everything. But he's like a big, big like UFO nut, almost to like the conspiracy, theory S type, but not like a tinfoil hat type, but he's very much into like UFOs and stuff. And I was wondering what was your overall experience on that film, and especially with like the whole alien sequence.
Well, the alien sequence, I knew it was going to be good because it was being supervised and created by Industrial Light and Magic. And so even today, the state of the art visual effects guys. But at that time, they were doing some incredible stuff that nobody else was doing. They had just done Terminator 2, and it was just amazing to just to see the work that they were doing, and I was excited to be a part of it. And of course, Robert Patrick was the Liquid Terminator in Terminator 2, and so he was around. He was excited because he knew what they could do, and I was in a period of my career, the first 10 years of my career, I guess. So I was just trying to soak up everything I could and learn everything I could about every aspect of it, and I felt like that had a chance to really work. I feel like they made one really big mistake, and I told them on the set. They didn't listen to me, but I said, look, you got James Garner. He's a legend. The audience is going to, and in the story, he's investigating whether or not the guys, the lumberjacks, myself and Robert Patrick, invented this story about my character being abducted by aliens. And they show the audience in the beginning of the movie that it happened, objectively, that it is an event that happened. And then they spend 40 minutes or 50 minutes of the movie with James Garner doubting that it happened. And I said, the audience is going to feel cheated by that. So I just suggested that they put in either take out the shot where you see objectively that I'm abducted and make all those shots subjective. In other words, from somebody's point of view. And then just throw in a red herring shot of somebody like Craig Sheffer's character doing something with gas cans or just doing something that might have been a version of something so that the audience is like, oh, wait a second, maybe this is a hoax. And then at the end of the movie, you find out, no, not only was it not a hoax, watch what happened to this guy on the spaceship. I think had they done that, the movie would have been a massive hit, as opposed to like more of a kind of cult classic.
Right. I can definitely see that. To me, I still love it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to run it down. I probably shouldn't say what I just said. I mean, I think the movie is very good as it is. I'm just talking about for it to go into being like a blockbuster where everybody knows the movie. I mean, that one sequence with the aliens has been widely seen. Everybody knows that, and that's very well regarded. The rest of the movie, though, there's a little bit of it. It just lags in the middle, and that's because of that. I think people can't really articulate what it is, but if you have certain characters in a role, and James Garner is a flat-out movie star, and Tom Cruise, for example, flat-out movie star, the audience doesn't want their beloved movie stars to look stupid or to be in a bad situation in a movie that they can't overcome. So you can't let James Garner be wrong as a producer. You can't, unless you're going to let the audience know in the beginning that, oh, he's the bad guy, but he can't be the guy who's wrong or stupid.
I definitely see what you're saying. I definitely agree. It's still like to me like such a I guess because like I always kind of lean more towards like the cult classics. Those are like my favorite types of films. It's like the cult stuff. It definitely has that memorable alien sequence, and the fact that it is based on a true story versus a movie like War of the Worlds where Tom Cruise starred in, where it was almost to the point like too much of a blockbuster. And the fact that Fire in the Sky it's a cult movie, but it's also like a little bit of like along the indie genre as well, because like the only major effects that really go into that movie is the whole alien sequence where they're performing the weird surgery on you and everything. But it's definitely a character story that at least in the way I view it, it drives the story, and there's that mystery element to it where it's like you did know it happened, but there's the build up to when your character finally returns. And
right.
I still dig it. It's one of my all-time favorite movies as far as like
Thanks.
alien
I should have said anything.
stuff. Absolutely. And I also want to talk about Spawn, which is, again, I've always been a huge fan of the comics. I think Todd McFarlane, is amazing. I actually am a pretty big action figure collector. So when I was younger, having the Spawn movie come out and, being familiar with the comics and everything and the whole Movie Maniacs toy line that McFarlane put out, I was always like immediately drawn to his stuff. And when they finally did, the first interpretation of it, which, at the time may have not been, regarded, as well as some other comic book movies, I thought it was a great action, comic book movie. I love John Leguizamo in it. I thought Michael Jai White was just nailed Spawn, and your character was great in it as well. And I was wondering, what was your overall experience on that film?
Well, the guy who directed it was Mark DePay, who was one of the people I met at Industrial Light and Magic during Fire in the Sky. So he's just a really creative, interesting dude. And he came to me, he was going to direct his first movie, which is pretty daunting when your first movie is, I think the budget was $40 or $50 million on that movie. And, so adjusted for inflation and everything, that's like $100 million movie today. So he was a little bit, he wanted to have some allies on the set. So he asked me to come in and play that role. And I was really happy to do it. And it was fun. I mean, I got to be friends with, Michael Jai White and Leguizamo, and I already knew Martin Sheen. He and I have done a few films together. I just realized when you were asking me about Craig Sheffer, I was trying to think if there was anybody else I've worked with 3 times, and the answer is Martin Sheen. We did a movie about Son of Sam, a TV movie where I was very quickly in it. I was just one of the victims of Son of Sam. He and I didn't have a scene together, but I was on the set with him. And then we did Hear No Evil with John C. McGinley, who's a guy I've worked with a couple times. And then Spawn. So it's interesting. I just occurred to me those are the 2 I've worked with the most.
And those are actually some of the other films I wanted to talk to you about. We could actually go straight into that if you want, because I did have Hear No Evil on the list. And Martin Sheen has done like a lot of versatile stuff. I love that movie he did where his son directed. It was a crime thriller, Truth or Consequence, New Mexico. And I love how he can play like a good like cop, or a good like strong type villain. I was wondering what your overall experience was working on those films.
Martin's a great actor. Going right back to Apocalypse Now, or what was it? He played a soldier who was executed Private Slovak, I think it was called. He was tremendous in that. I mean, he's a great actor. Badlands, he's one of those guys that I looked up to when I was starting out as an actor. So to get a chance to work with him several times, and he's also a very good person, big-hearted guy, and got to know the whole family, his wife, and obviously Charlie and Emilio, and just a good family. So one of the good people.
Awesome. Let's talk about your new show, Two Dumb Mix.
Yes, sir. That's I'm a big fan of the old one-reel comedies, which beginning of movies. Everybody's heard the term Nickelodeon. What they used to play at the Nickelodeons was they call them one-reelers, and it was usually a comedy or a drama or a train robbery or something. But it was only 10 or 12 minutes long, because that was the technical extent of what movie cameras and projectors could handle. So that was sort of a forced length on storytelling at that time. And because of that, I think there was a great efficiency in establishing characters, establishing story, and getting to the meat of it. And it's everything old is new again. And here we are with with Quibi and with all these other versions, Disney Plus. All these places are trying to get you to watch content on your phone, and content on your phone needs to be shorter, because it's a smaller screen and it's not stable like something projected on a wall or a TV screen. So there's an evolution towards shorter content. I thought, well, that's cool. I'm gonna try and go back to the not as early as the silent movies of the one-reelers, but the later comedians, Abbott and Costello, the Three Stooges, Laurel and Hardy. There's an aspect of those stories where we know who the 2 main guys are, the 2 idiots or the 2 bumbling guys, and what's going to happen to them this time. And that's what I wanted to set up with Two Dumb Mix. And people are really responding to it. I mean, we're on our way to 200,000 views, and we've passed 100,000, and it's just blowing up. People are loving it, and so we're looking forward to creating more episodes.
Awesome. And where can everyone view it? Is it just on the phone, or is there?
Oh, it's on Facebook. You go to facebook.com/2dumbmix. There's no B in the dumb, because they're dumb. And if you just Google Two Dumb Mix, it should come up. But it's living on Facebook. I don't know if it's always going to stay there when we start making more episodes. But for right now, that's where it is. And the more views we get, the better it is, for our growing the series in the future. So we've just been very gratified with how many people have watched it already, and just excited for the future.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I have two closure questions for you. And I figure we can I'd love to have you on the show again and talk about more of your work. But my two closer questions are if you have any other upcoming projects to promote, and what are some of your favorite films, just in general?
Well, I've got a movie called Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre, which is going to come out later this year. I don't know the date yet, but Randy Couture's in it, and directed by Max Martini, who's a good friend of mine, terrific actor. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's kind of a comedy spin on the whole zombie genre. And the little bit that I've seen of it, it looks like it's really funny. Written by these two funny guys who are former professional wrestlers. So it has a real authenticity to it. And I'm real excited about that one. And then as far as my favorite movies, the movie I've seen the most is Casablanca. And that's kind of an obvious one. I guess a lot of people like that one for good reason. It's the best movie ever made. I love Bogart, so anything he's in, I like him. Treasure Sierra Madre, African Queen. Steve McQueen is one of my favorite actors. So just about anything he's in, especially Bullet, The Sand Pebbles, Dirty Dozen. I'm sorry, not Dirty Dozen. Oh, shoot, I'm blanking out.
The Great Escape.
Great Escape, yeah. Jeez, I just crossed my wires there for a second. So I love those two guys are two of my favorite actors. And then of the more modern movies, there's a movie called The Dead Zone with Martin Sheen, which is one of my favorite movies. I think it's the best movie David Cronenberg ever made. The Thing is a John Carpenter movie, which I love, with Keith David, who's a good friend of mine, Kurt Russell, obviously, and many other great actors are in that. But Keith David's a guy that I did some theater with, and so I've always loved seeing him on screen because I think he's a very underrated guy. Movies very recently, I really enjoyed watching Green Book. Was written by Brian Curry and Nick Vallelonga, who are two guys who were both in my movie Two Tickets to Paradise. And I co-wrote the movie with Brian, so it was very exciting for me to see all the success those guys had. And people that have seen Green Book and like it, and I want to see Two Tickets to Paradise because it's a bit of a, it's not exactly, it doesn't deal with race and so forth in 1962, but it does, it's a road trip from the north to the south. So it's a little bit of a study, I think, maybe for Green Book in some regards. But, it's just a tremendous movie. And I can't really, think of any other movies that I like 1917 a lot this year. And I mentioned earlier, Midway was very good, I thought. So, but movies unfortunately are not what they used to be, and some of that is because content is morphing into shorter forms. The audience has been fractured and atomized, so there's no real. It's not like if you come out with Gone with the Wind that everybody's going to line up and see the movie the same Friday and Saturday night. So that doesn't really exist the way it used to, except for Marvel movies, it seems, or Star Wars movies. It's the whole way we receive content has evolved, but I think that movies have suffered from it because there's not as much attention on having that collective experience with a story that lasts 90 minutes or 2 hours. And we're all in it together. That's the part of movies that I think is really exciting and fun.
Absolutely. Well, DB, thank you so much for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me. Again, I'd love to have you on again anytime, and I hope the temperature was just right.
Yeah, the temperature's great. The water's fine. Your filters are working. And thanks for sending people over to facebook.com/2dumbmix with no B. And it's only 5 minutes long. I think people really enjoy it. I know during this quarantine especially, everybody needs a laugh.
Absolutely.
And Two Dumb Mix will not let you down, I guarantee you. It's 5 minutes well spent.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Take care, bud.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.